talking about what it means to turn your expertise into influence and build a legacy through the power of your own narrative. If you're ready to show up, show out, and scale up, you're in the right place. Let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Women of Color Live, the live version of the Women of Color, an intimate conversation, a top 20 women's empowerment podcast. We center and empower women of color. We also have a community for Black women 50 plus. It's the Dream Lifestyle Collective. Shout out to the production team at the Leon Thomas Group. Thank you so much for having our backs. So today's guest is Trish Lindo. She is a global small business consultant, storytelling strategist, and founder of Too Ambitious Consulting. She's also a FAMU graduate with a decade of experience at CNN, Yahoo, and Oprah.com. Trish helps founders turn expertise into global influence. Now, this month, we're concluding, today is the last day of April, our series on women who build legacy in real time. Trish, welcome to Women of Color Live.
Hey, how are you, Deneen? Thank you so much for having me.
I am so well. And you know what? We go back. I was trying to think how many years it's been now.
Maybe about 4 years or so, maybe, right?
No, more. It was before 2020, before COVID.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, so that was before I was working at LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yes,
wow.
You started a creative program and whatever, because you were like my community creative manager, whatever your title is.
I know. I tend to forget life before COVID.
Exactly. That's why it's like we all forget. I mean, that was 6 years ago. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It is, well, I'm glad to be here with you and be in conversation with you. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And you know what, just briefly, just try to catch us up then. So, you just mentioned LinkedIn. That was our connection. And so what has life been like since?
Yeah, for sure. So since then, I'm a founder of Too Ambitious. I work with founders. I help them to leverage their thought leadership across social media. So not just LinkedIn, but, really looking at their work and their story and seeing how they can sort of leverage that and which platforms make the most sense for them. Because I sometimes think that's the hardest part, is to try and figure out where you should show up and how you should show up. So that's the work that I'm doing now. Like you said, you and I, we worked together when I was at LinkedIn as a senior creator manager there, and you were part of my cohort as I was working with founders like yourself there. So, since then, I've just gone off on my own and doing my own thing and continuing to help founders.
Awesome. And I think we'll probably get a little bit more into that. But what I love about what you said and what's so important, you're absolutely right. There's so many platforms out there. Some of us are trying to be like on all of them or a lot of them. And, we're wearing ourselves thin. We're exerting a lot of energy that's probably misplaced. Yeah. And so for you having a business where you're helping people to say, well, you know what are you trying to accomplish? And actually this one platform or these three would probably be best and help you get to where you're going.
Yes, exactly. And, it's a challenging because when you are a founder, you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're just starting out, and it can be overwhelming, and you're listening to what other people are telling you. You are probably comparing yourself to other people and what other founders are doing. And then you're like, yeah, well, I need to do that too, so you really don't realize that you actually need a strategy and that there is a strategy behind how you show up on social media.
And so that is really what this podcast is about. That's what the Dream Lifestyle Collective is about, is supporting one another to get us, the support and help, strategy, direction that we need, whether you're a founder or not, right? You might just be an everyday shiro, just living life and still, need some kind of direction. And so it's important for us to have that sisterhood, that tribe, the board of
Absolutely.
directors, whatever you want to call it, that strategist, that support. But bottom line is, we don't need to do it alone. There are other
No,
people to help us.
absolutely. I mean, you can't get anywhere by yourself.
Right.
I think that it's so important to have community, and it's so important to have, not only friends and family, but people who support your journey, who support your vision, who can lend their expertise to what you're doing and potentially help you to scale your business as well. But, I think as a solopreneur, it's very easy to sort of kind of get all in your own head and realize that you're not alone, and to seek out community and others that are like-minded.
Yeah, absolutely. And in what you said a little bit earlier about like so many different voices. I know when I started the podcast, which is 6+ years old,
Oh
we
my
are,
gosh,
yes,
congratulations.
thank you. I'm like, okay.
Congratulations.
And and for those who have been listening and watching, you probably heard me say this before, but it was from, I would describe it as from panel to podcast. And now I'm adding production. So from panel to
Yes,
podcast to production, right? That's
yes,
been hard.
yes.
That's been my journey. But when I started, there's so much information, so much content. It's like 1,000 people are telling you, what you should do with your podcast. And I said, you know what, that's too much. And I found one voice that I really, like she's my Bible for podcasts. And Danielle Desir Corbett is her name. You may be familiar with her off of LinkedIn, or even when she had the Women of Color podcasters. She was the voice that I followed. So if it didn't come from or through her, then I probably, I just blocked it out because it's overwhelming. It's too much. So again, I appreciate the work that you're doing. And before we jump into our questions, those who are watching, tap in, let us know you're out there, drop a comment, drop a
Yes.
WC, drop Dreamer, ask
Yeah.
questions, right? Because we want this to be engaging, and we want to know you're out there. All right, so who were you before the title, before the CNN and Yahoo credentials? And what was the decision that shifted how you saw yourself as a builder for other builders?
Yeah, I think when I look back, and if we're going back way past CNN, I was a young woman who had recently graduated from Florida A&M University, and I really wasn't 100% sure of what I wanted to do with my life. So I was a little confused and not having much direction. I did not have a mentor, and I was just kind of figuring it out. I was the first person in my family to go to college and graduate from college. So I couldn't really lean on that to kind of help me for guidance. So I graduated with a degree in broadcast journalism and really was thinking, I'd become an on-air reporter. And, I remember a professor said, it's going to be challenging in the beginning because you're probably going to end up in a small market. And that's typical when you are a reporter. That's how you start off, in a small market, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get to the big cities right away. So I ended up moving to Los Angeles and wanted to work in entertainment. And I decided that, Los Angeles was the center of the universe in terms of entertainment. And I could have gone to New York too, but I didn't like the cold weather. So I was like,
Because you're Caribbean, right?
yeah, I was like, Los Angeles it is, and I didn't know anyone. I went there with just a couple of $100 in my pocket, and it was an alumni at FAMU whose friend that I slept on their futon, until I like figured it out, and basically I would say I was young, but because I didn't know what I didn't know, I didn't think anything was a big deal. Moving across the country, not having much money, not having a job. And I think that's just the beauty of being young and, just like carefree, like, yeah, I'm just going to do it, and that's what I did. And I would say I was very fearless then, but I didn't know that I was being fearless. I was just like doing what I thought I needed to do. And obviously I knew I needed to make money in order to pay my bills. So that's all I knew at that point. So that was who I was before all the other stuff.
I love that. And you know what? And several things I want to point out. First of all, shout out to FAMU because I know so many people from FAMU.
Hey,
Right.
Rattlers.
So, the Rattlers, right? So
Yep.
shout out to them. And $200 in LA, girl.
I know. I know. I was, you know what? I look back and I was like, you were out of your mind.
Okay.
I was completely out of my mind because I had just bought a brand new car too.
Oh,
I just
okay.
bought a brand new car because all I knew, people said, well, you're definitely going to need a car in LA. Do
Yes.
not go to LA without a car. So I bought a car, drove across the country with one of my friends from college, and got there. And I thought I'd be fine
Hmm.
until the first time I went to go get gas and I looked at the gas prices. I was like, oh, I was like, I'm going to need a job like right away, you know?
Base.
But again, it didn't seem like that big of a hurdle to me, you know.
Hmm.
And again, I think that's part of just being young, you know.
Yeah.
Everything is just so, it's bright, it's just like anything is possible, you know, when you're young, you know. You don't have like the constraints of life yet, you know. And looking back now, literally I was like, yeah, you were insane. Would I do that now? No, because I now have that, you know, I have probably too much information now
Yes.
to make that decision. But I didn't know then. I just was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. How hard can it be? You know? Yeah,
Do you wish you were still that person though? Do you wish like whatever you've learned
absolutely.
since then? Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways I wish we all were, you know,
Hmm.
because as you get older, you know, life knocks you down. It gives you your punches. You earn those stripes, and you know, in a lot of ways you do get a little scared to try new things and to be fearless, you know, to make those leaps. And I think for me right now, I have to hype myself up to make
Hmm.
those leaps. I'm
Hmm.
not afraid of making the leaps, but I'm more cautious. I'm
Right.
like, well, you know, I'm weighing it. You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if I do this and that, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas when I was younger, I would have like done it and
Just did
no
it.
thought, yeah, just like
Yeah.
did it. You know,
Yeah.
now it's more like cause and consequence. Well, if you do this, this is going to happen, you know, that sort of thing. And I do think there's value in that for sure, you know, but I think there are some times in our lives where we just have to make the leap. You know, I call it
Mhm.
jumping off a cliff and asking for questions later, you know. So yeah, you know, it's scary,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Absolutely. And that's how I'm here 6 years later, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you've been a listener of the podcast, watching the videos, you've heard me say at some point how I just Nike'd it and did it. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did. And it's funny because I did a video yesterday or the day before. And let me tell you, I have no problem doing a podcast, interviewing people. I have no problem being on a panel, moderating it. But
Right.
where I'm vulnerable or where I'm like, is getting in front of the camera by myself, or even doing a
Ah.
solo podcast by myself because I'm like, what am I talking about? So
I
yeah,
know.
I had. Right. So I'm
Yeah.
practicing that now of just getting in front of the camera and doing the videos or whatever. But it was another Nike that moment for me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just recently posted about. So,
Yeah.
you talked about who you were before, that fearless, which you didn't realize that's what you were. You were just being you, just living life
Yeah.
and just doing what you were doing. And then
Absolutely.
lives, right? And you mentioned being knocked down. What I'm sure there's at least one thing that you've probably done in the last few years where you just said, forget it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, you know, I think that the last few years have been a challenge. And I think that's for all of us, right? I
Yes.
think post COVID, you know, our society has changed tremendously in the last few years. And if you are a Black woman, or a person of color, or a Black man, or a Black, or, you know, it's been difficult. You know,
Mhm.
things have changed, the culture has shifted. Corporate has shifted, everything has changed a lot, and that has had a ripple effect across industries. And so, yeah, it has been a challenge. Um, Going out on my own and starting my own business was very scary. You know, as somebody who's been part of corporate structures for many years, starting my own business and figuring it out, because there isn't a roadmap, for everybody's business necessarily. You can ask people questions, but it doesn't necessarily apply to what you're doing and where you're at in your business and your life. So I would say, definitely starting my own business, becoming an entrepreneur was probably one of the biggest leaps that I've taken. And listen, entrepreneurship is not for the weak. It really is not. It will humble you, and it has humbled me many times. I have dealt with, figuring out like, how do I, build my sales funnel, and like finding the right clients, and, people not paying on time, or people saying they're going to do things and they don't do it, finding the right support systems, having the right systems in place, from legal to, finance and that sort of thing. Having those systems in place is one of the most important things that you'll learn as an entrepreneur, which no one really tells you in the beginning, right? Because they sell entrepreneurship as like, this is a great thing, you can do whatever you want, and then at some point you're going to be flying on a private jet and all will be well, right? But as we know, that's not true. I'm not saying you can't fly on a private jet.
Right.
I'm not saying that. Let's get that clear. But out the gate, no, it's really, really challenging. So, you're constantly battling with yourself. And if you're a solopreneur, to your point earlier, you really need your community, because you get in your own head, you're in your house or the cafe by yourself, and you're just, it's just you and your thoughts just out there, and that is not the best place to be, because you realize you can't do this alone. You can't make this journey alone. You just can't.
And you know what? And so I would say you can. It's just going to take longer.
Absolutely.
It's going to take more work, right? It's going to you're going to end up spending time spinning your wheels.
Yes.
Right. When you don't have to. So, yes. So, yes.
For sure. Yes. And I think that, listen, as a solopreneur, they're all, obviously we know AI has changed the landscape of our, how we do work and the future of work. And so you can leverage AI to help you with tasks and to help you to, support your business. So, I will say that, and I'm someone who is very passionate about AI and learning more about it and how to use it responsibly and how it impacts us as a people and as a society. Those are some of the things that I think about sometimes, not only in how to leverage AI for my work, but is this responsible? Is this sustainable in the long term?
Right. And even by using it, it's just another tool. You still need people, right?
Exactly.
You still have those conversations and bounce some things off of. And sure, you can use your AI. You can have those conversations, but it's still not human, right? And it's not that human. You can't hug you, right? At least not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Well, they do have robots.
I know. I was saying, you get that robot. Yeah. We're not there. Right. Okay. So listen again, y'all who are out there watching, drop those comments, drop WC Dream or something. We want to know you're out there. Okay. So Trish, what did you have to unlearn from the world's top newsrooms to other corporate experiences to fully step into the Too Ambitious brand you're building today?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. And I think that so many of us can relate to it, is the shedding, the things that you have to let go of. And I learned several lessons. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that not everything is about you. A lot of the decisions that happen are really not about you. It's about the other person. And I think the other thing that I've learned, and I think the scariest part, is the self-belief, is believing in yourself. So I know for a long time I didn't believe in my own greatness, and believing that the things that I wanted were possible to attain, because for so long, you're sort of in these structures that tell you that you can't be great. You're not getting as far as you want to in a corporate structure. So you start to believe that maybe you're not that great, or maybe, your skills aren't valuable, or maybe you need to get another degree or to get another certificate, whatever the case may be. So I had to realize that I'm already enough.
Yes.
I'm enough. And that because I'm enough, I am definitely built for greatness. I am greatness. And I really have to believe that in order to get to becoming too ambitious. And so, too ambitious really came out of the fact that I had a manager who told me that I was too ambitious, you know.
Mm,
And so that's how the title of my company and, a show that I used to have came about. And so I remember when I was told that, I was like, well, what does that mean?
exactly.
What am I supposed to do with that? Right. And I personally think, listen, you want to call me a feminist or something like that. I personally think it's imperative for women to be ambitious. It's imperative because
Absolutely.
as a society, women aren't valued at the same way that men are valued. We know that. And you can argue with y'all selves. I'm serious. It's true. It's
Well,
true.
what, here, let me just say this. You actually can stop after women are not valued.
Yeah.
Period.
It's true. It's so
Yeah,
true.
we're seeing it.
Yeah, it's true. So we have to have our ambition. We have to be confident. We have to be, better and believe in ourselves as well. That's the only way that we can sort of make the strides that we have made and the ones that we continue to make is that self-belief that we are good at what we're doing. We are confident in the work that we're doing, and no one's going to stop us.
Right.
No one. So, yeah.
Right. So, okay, this here, I want to park here for a bit because this brings up so many different things.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm just curious, was it a woman, the
Yeah.
manager? Was she a black woman or?
No, she wasn't a black woman.
Okay. So that part, who
Yeah.
says that? Who does that? How do you tell somebody they're to anything? And who are you to even to say that? Like, what credentials do you have to tell someone they're to something?
Right.
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 And that's something that I definitely have a issue with because I don't understand it. What do you mean I'm too ambitious? What do you
Yeah.
mean I'm to this, I'm to that? I don't get that because again,
Right.
who are you to say what I am and what I'm not? Now,
Yeah.
let's look at maybe the job description, like in my
Right.
job description
Right.
or the performance, whatever. Where does this align? Where does this fit?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, if it's not here, then what are we talking about? Because now it's personal and you're really what it is you're intimidated by me.
Yeah.
You're intimidated by
Yeah.
my greatness, what I bring to the table, how far I can go. So now
Right.
you're trying to put me in a box.
Yes. And I think that is the hardest part that you have to sort of reconcile in your mind. First of all, you have to understand what is happening so that because you have to sort of deal with it in real time, right?
Mhm.
So you have to realize what is happening, think on the fly, and then once you leave that meeting and that situation or that company, then the real work starts because you need to start reprogramming your mind. You have to start, and whatever that looks like for you, whether it's meditation, affirmations, reading books, that will empower you and help you to really grow that self-belief again in yourself, because whether you realize it or not, damage has been done. It
Yes.
has been done. And so we take those hits all the time and then we say we're fine. But at the end of the day, the next time you go, whether it's to your next job or to be an entrepreneur, you question yourself.
Yep.
You second guess yourself.
You
You
shrink.
say, oh, well, maybe I can't do that. I'm not really sure, because of what someone has said to you or several people have said to you over time. So you constantly have to realize that damage has been done to my self-worth. It's like a chink in the armor, that you have to constantly be polishing up that armor. And a lot of that really needs to happen on our own and really doing the work. And that becomes hard too,
Yeah.
and for some people, therapy is real as well. That's helpful. But there's a many different ways that you can go about journaling, that sort of thing, to really sort of get back to who you were and believing that the things that you want to achieve are possible and not to second guess yourself.
Absolutely, because that was done by design, right? Because that
Right.
person threw you off your block. She threw you off
Yeah.
your square. Because
Yeah.
now you all those things you just said, that's what you're doing, as opposed to continue to excel in what it is that you were doing.
Yes.
It's pulled you back. Like, okay, you were about to do the darn thing, and now you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't. Should I?
Yeah.
I don't know. Da da da.
Yeah.
You know, all those different things. That's by design.
Yeah.
And so now you actually have to start answering some questions at this point. What do you do with that? What do you do with it? Right. And you gave us some things that you can do to get through it. Also, is it time to start looking for something else? Is
Right.
it time for me to look for a different opportunity? Is it time for me to leave this place? Right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a blessing in disguise.
I
Especially
agree.
thinking about like, man, I'm ready to do this thing, right? But you need that push. And sometimes it's that push. So it's sometimes a good thing, right? And
It
like,
is.
yeah, and what you were talking about before, that's what I went through, you know, things I started thinking about when I made a decision to retire. So you had said earlier about sometimes it's not about you. So here's my thing. Should it be? Shouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, I think, hey, we've all worked in corporate structures and everything like that. And, there are situations where decisions are made and yeah, it's not about you. But I do still think that you should still center yourself. And centering yourself means that you are taking care of yourself, which means that you are constantly keeping receipts of all your successes and all your
Yes.
wins, right?
Yes.
That means that you are also looking outside of the corporate structure and building relationships outside of that. You can also
Yes.
obviously build relationships internally as well, but you should also be building relationships outside as well. Networking, going to different networking events to build those relationships because, and especially where we are right now with layoffs being essentially a weekly thing, you have to make sure that you are prioritizing yourself and you're thinking about your future because any day could be your last day at that
Yes.
job. And now, according to the data, it's taking some people a year and a half to find a new opportunity. So I'm not saying that you have to become an entrepreneur because, like I've said, it's not easy. It's not, if you can avoid, and listen, to get you another job if that's what you need, especially if you have a family, you got mortgage, you have, for some of us who have elderly people in our family that you're supporting, I'm not going to tell anybody that, oh, you should become an entrepreneur, because the reality of it is that you probably won't make any money, at least for the first 6 months, because you're scaling, right? You're figuring it out, so everybody has to do what's best for them. But the number one thing that you should be doing if you are in a corporate structure currently is to plan for your future. And that should be centering yourself and doing everything you can daily to ensure that if you get laid off or if you decide to leave, that there are a community of people that can help you. You have a certain amount of funding that you have set up to take care of yourself and your family ahead of time. And essentially it's just making a plan. Making a plan means that you put yourself and your family first. Because
Absolutely.
unless you do that, there's no way that you're going to be able to survive what's to come.
And get what you can out of the company, right? They have so many different development programs, so many this, so many that. You can get this certification and so on and so forth. Let them fund all of that. Like go to the HR website, look at all the things that you're interested in and lean into all of that because it's 100% about you, for you. The company is not. Right? It's not. They've shown that. There were times when they did care about people, not so much anymore. So you have to care about you and you have to get everything that you need for yourself. And like you've said, and like Kaila James and I talked about last week, you have to remember who TF you are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Kaila.
Remember all that.
Yes. It's so true, and I also do want to say too, given that, so many people are being laid off currently, there are people being laid off, but there are also people who are not laid off, but they're in jobs that may not be a healthy environment,
Right.
and they have to stay because the job market is very challenging currently. So, do the best you can while you're in those current structures to take care of yourself. Do the work on yourself to make sure that you stay mentally well, because it's not easy when you have to stay in a structure because it's taken you a long time to find your next opportunity, or because you're like, hey, I'm not really sure where I'm going to go to next,
Yeah.
or what I'm going to do. So, but really do the work and take care of yourself. And, to your point, Deneen, see what other programs that the company may offer that you can be a part of while you're in this waiting stage.
Absolutely. And like you're saying, you have a family, you have yourself that you need to take care of. So also, look at that as well. Like, okay, what the pros and cons, look at those type of things. Because, I was having a conversation with someone who said, yeah, my job is cool. I wish I was making more money.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. We all do. But then I also said to this person, because they had some health challenges and their company was very lenient, flexible around that. Take that into consideration.
Yes.
Because you may be somewhere else, maybe making a little bit more money, but they're like, oh no, you can't have time off. No,
Right.
we're not dealing with that. So you got to look at the whole picture. So everything we're saying, and look at the whole picture. So it's not just about, you not being happy there. Look at the full picture, but still work on yourself, work on getting what it is you need for yourself with whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, 1000%, 1000%. It's difficult when you're in it though to think that strategically, because every day, you're getting Teams messages or, Slack, and you're just like, oh my God, but yeah, you really do have to sort of focus yourself and set the intention of what it is that you want.
Yep. And then, like you said, that's where the beauty and benefit and value of having that community. Because he had the conversation with me. Had he not had the conversation with me, he wouldn't have thought about that. Right. And so again, that's why it's important for us to have community and whatnot. And another thing I wanted to say too, I wanted to just make this clear to those who are watching or listening. Keep track of your wins. Like Trish said, every little win, like whatever you think is a win, even if it's like, oh, I emailed this person and they responded. Count it as a win. Keep track of all of that, right? Because you want, you're letting the universe, God, whomever know, like, I appreciate it and keep it coming.
Yes.
Bring more of that. But it's a way for you to, again, to remember who TF you are when you're keeping track. Like when we don't keep track, we kind of forget about, oh yeah, I did.
Yeah.
This thing, right? But when you're tracking it, it's right there in front of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So Trish, you say your story is your most powerful business asset, yet so many women leave it on the table. Why is it that the most brilliant women are often the most hesitant to tell their own story? And you know what? Hold that thought. We'll be back after this break. Hi, I'm Deneen L. Garrett, a cultural alchemist who shapes culture through storytelling, through writing, through speaking, through my top 20 women's empowerment podcasts. And if you're seeing this, you're watching me on Women of Color Live, the live version, the weekly live version of that podcast. I am coming to you to ask you to vote for me. I am in the running to become Entrepreneur of Impact, and it's going to take all of us to get me there. So check this out and stay tuned. Craig had asked, why is it that the most brilliant women are often the most hesitant to tell their story?
Yeah, sometimes I don't think necessarily they are hesitant. It's more so that they don't know how to share their story. That's the first thing that I've noticed. The other thing is that they have a story, but they are trying to figure out the best way to share it. And it gets confusing, right? Because again, a lot of us are comparing ourselves to other people. So because my story is not like this person over here, then my story is not it's not valuable. So I'm not going to share it. Right. The other thing is fear. I don't want to put my story out there. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's that important, but here's the thing. We all have a story. We all have a story. All of our stories have value. It's really about knowing that inherently. And then after that is deciding what parts of that story that you want to share, especially as it pertains to your business. Now, what I would say is you don't have to share everything. There are people out there who share everything about their lives, and that's fine. You don't have to do that. So you can decide what you want to share and what's like true for you. If you don't want to talk about your kids, then don't talk about your kids. If you don't want to talk about your childhood, you don't have to talk about your childhood. Maybe you're only talking about certain aspects of your life and career that makes sense for you. But then you'll go to the next person. They're like, oh, no, I talk about my family. I talk about my kids. Like, that's part of my story. So you don't have to be like anybody else. You just have to decide what part of the story makes sense for you and share that.
So when you're working with founders, the people that you're working with, is there any like one thing that all of them should do? Like you recommend to everybody, to most of the people, yes, you should share this aspect of your story, or you should do this one thing?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to understand your why. Why are you telling me this story? Right. And so a lot of people don't know their why before they start. So you have to know your why. So if you start a business, much like you, Deneen, I'm sure if I ask you, what is your why? How did you get to, WOC Live? How do you get to Dreamers? Like you would have a story. And so you could tell me your why. You're like, well, this happened. And then that's how I got here. So a lot of people have to understand that why. And sometimes it really just takes you sort of writing it out or talking on, you can use your phone, that sort of thing, and recording yourself talking about why you're doing the thing that you're doing. Why is it important to you? And we all know that looks different for everybody. People have gone through so much in their lives that have put them at where they're at right now that you would not believe. You look at some of the greatest out there, people like Oprah, who she could tell you her why she became a journalist to begin with, why she started her talk show back then, why she started her own network. There is a why there. And all of us have that why, and if you want to think about it in like Marvel, it's the origin story. What is your origin story? So that is the piece that I know like a lot of founders miss. They think that it's really just about like when I say tell your story, it means like, okay, fine, tomorrow I'm going to show up on social media. I'm just going to say some stuff. It's like, no. You need to know your why, first of all. Yeah. Why are you telling me this story? Why does this story matter? And why should me as your audience care? Because social media is a very busy and popular place. It is competitive, as we know. And so you want to make sure that your story that you're telling is the most impactful and will resonate with the audience that you want it to resonate with. It's not about going viral. It's not. It's really about showing up intentionally with your why, whether it's to promote your business, promote a platform, promote a new book, a podcast, whatever the case may be. Knowing your why, knowing how you want to connect with your audience and the type of audience that you want to connect with will determine how you show up across social media.
Yeah. And that's why I'm doing more of those videos that I tell you when I'm doing it. It's like, oh my God, like, yeah, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but to share more of myself, right? Because people like to connect. They like to know, right? They want to know a little bit more about you. Like you said, your why, like tell the why as opposed to just always in text giving that and whatnot. So that's what I'm leaning into now. And I want to say thank you. And I'm thinking, so if you don't know your why and you have a business, and that's kind of a bigger problem because your why should be the reason why you started your business, right? And the foundation for your business. So that's very important to know your why, whether it's business, anything like we were talking before, even as an employee, what is your why? Like, what is it? Why are you doing the thing that you're doing? What is it that you want to accomplish? You have to know those things in order to get there. So Trish, let's talk a little bit about your business. So founders are coming to you. They're needing some strategy around social media, different platforms. So let's talk about that. And I'll share. So for me, I have Women of Color Live, right? So I'm really, passionate about the podcast, the streaming, and I also have a community for Black women 50 and up. So I'm using Facebook. I'm using obviously YouTube. I'm using LinkedIn, Threads, and Instagram. So those are my primary spaces, and I pretty much share the same message, a little different on each one.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so that's me. So I'm the client coming to you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, I don't think that you would necessarily be my ideal client at this time, right? Okay. Because you're already ahead of the game. You're already ahead of the game. You're like, I got my platform. I share it in different ways, and that's exactly how you should do it. You can definitely repurpose your content, but you shouldn't be repurposing your content and putting the same thing across all your platforms, because every platform works differently, right? Different algorithms, and you need to optimize that content accordingly. So my ideal client is a founder who is either just getting started with their business, or they've had their business for a while, but they're like, I haven't thought about social media at all. People keep telling me this is what I need to do. I have no idea how to show up. So I get those people in a state where they're like, I'm literally trying to figure it out. And I start with them. I have a questionnaire that I start to kind of gauge where they are in the process. And then from there, I take them through, we have conversations virtually or in person, where I have conversations with them trying to assess who they are, because I'm not going to tell you to do a bunch of live videos if you're like, I hate talking and I don't want to look at myself on camera. I don't need that, even though if that's what I think you should do, but I'm not going to force you to do that if that's not something you're comfortable doing. Yeah. You can work up to that for sure. Right. But whenever someone's like, oh no, I'm not doing camera, I'm not doing that, I'm not going to tell you, well, you need to be doing live videos. Like, come on. Right. Because you're not going to do it. Yes. But if maybe you're like, I love to write. Okay. Well, maybe let's start off with a newsletter. Let's start off writing a newsletter. You can do one on LinkedIn, you can do one on Substack or Beehive or Kit. You can create a newsletter. That way you sort of own your story. It's longer prose. You can really take that time to write. And typically the people who write love that. They're like, oh, that's perfect. That's great. So you can still connect with your audience. You can still get your story out there. You can build a community all at the same time. And so some of them will say like, I'm not on any platforms. I'm only on Facebook, right? Or, depending on the product or service that they're selling, I will recommend, hey, you need to be on Instagram. I had a client who was a food, she had a food product that she wanted to put out, but she wasn't very active on Instagram. So I told her, I was like, well, you got to be on Instagram. It's all about food. And, you can do like the shots, because I used to work for BuzzFeed Tasty. So I know all about how to create food videos and how to really capture those moments in food to make people get excited. And they're like, I'm hungry. I want to eat that. So I, shared with her some of the tricks and tips that she can use. And I'm like, okay, that's what you should be doing. That same content doesn't necessarily work on LinkedIn. So now for LinkedIn, I told her, you need to start sharing more of like your why and the story behind it, the business of creating a food brand. Talk a little bit about that, because as we know, the world's Fortune 500 company, thought leaders and decision makers are on LinkedIn. So who knows? You might be able to find a partner on there, or a brand that's like, hey, we're interested in your product. We want to buy it, that sort of thing. So it's really thinking through those things strategically. And then, inevitably, someone always goes, do I need to be on TikTok? And listen, I love TikTok. I do. But if you don't want to be on TikTok, you do not need to be on TikTok. It's fine. People are like, oh, I don't want to be dancing. Okay, first of all, people dance on TikTok, but also people are sharing just exceptional information on TikTok as well. People, I mean, it's like the new learning platform, if you ask me, obviously double check stuff. But TikTok is a place, like, if you're a talker, if you love to talk, and if you have interesting things to share, you can grow extraordinarily well on TikTok and do really well with it. And you can leverage TikTok to send maybe back to your product, have a link back to your product or service, or to, maybe you can send them to your newsletter if you want. So each platform can serve a purpose for you. It's not really just sort of like willy-nilly, like, I'm just out here, that sort of thing.
Is there like one that you tell majority of your clients that they should be on? Is there any like one, like, you should be on that?
I mean, the number one platform you should be on if you're a business owner or executive is LinkedIn, as it is structured today. Again, that's where the Fortune 500 decision makers are. You can build on LinkedIn. First of all, LinkedIn, if someone Googles you, 9 times out of 10, the first thing will be your LinkedIn profile. Okay. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, then you're kind of missing out. The other thing is you should have your own website. Now, I will say this, though, when you're starting out, if you just started a business last week, you don't necessarily need to have a website out the gate, because we know the energy that it takes to put a website together. And most of the time, people don't even go to websites. They'll just be like, I'll just DM you on whatever platform and call it a day. Like, and that's what I did. Like, don't do what I did. Like, I had to have the website and all the other things. And then everybody just DM'd me on LinkedIn. I was like, well, great.
Hey, I have this website.
Yeah, I was like, I did all this energy on this website and no one cared. But I do notice that once I got going, the website became valuable, because now the website is like the second thing under the Google search. So it's LinkedIn first, then the website. So it does, from an SEO standpoint, it is absolutely valuable to have in the long term. But everybody should be on LinkedIn, because if you're a business leader, you're managing a business, you should have a presence on LinkedIn. Even if you post once a week, you should be on LinkedIn. And then after that, you should be deciding which platform it is, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, IG. Substack is now becoming the next big thing. You were able to do lives on Substack. You're able to do your newsletter. You can comment, you can build on there. And so, you've got all these platforms that are they all serve a different purpose. Yeah. Right now, Threads is like one of my favorites. I love Threads because the conversations are so easy to have on there. And so everybody has to decide which platform they feel most comfortable with. It's like trying on a new dress or a pair of shoes. You'd be like, this feels good, that sort of thing.
And where you're wearing it to.
Right.
So that will help you to determine which one. Now on LinkedIn, so you're a business owner, is it enough to just be Deneen L. Garrett, or do I also need to have my business page?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have your own personal profile, for sure. You can have a business page, for sure, but 9 times out of 10, people are going to come to your personal profile first. But you can definitely post some of your content on your business page and drive it back to your personal page. That way, people can continue to connect the two. But 9 times out of 10, if you meet somebody at an event, a conference or whatever, you tell them Deneen L. Garrett, they're going to Deneen L. Garrett. Right. That's because that's where the relationship is. People like to build relationships with people, not necessarily the companies. Because if you think about it, people want to work with you because of you.
Yes.
Not necessarily your business. Your business is great, but they're coming because of you, the relationship that they built with you, either in person or virtually, or, maybe they saw a couple of your posts, they've been following you for a little bit, so they feel like they know you. They're like, I want to work with Deneen, because I think she gets me, so I want to work with her. Last thing is the name of your company. Sometimes they don't even know the name of your company. They're like, I don't know. Right. I just want to work with you.
Right. That's true. They know you. They know your name. That's who they met, connected, did the QR code, all the things. Exactly. And so I love that. And so working with you. And that's why, a lot of people were making posts and they always had the photo of themselves. And I'm like, what is that about? To drive that personal interaction, right? Exactly. Because they're looking for you. So your photo helps to cement whatever it is that you posted about. Right. and remind them of you. And again, why I'm starting to do those solo videos so people get to know me a little bit more, right?
Yeah,
And I'm telling them like, right, because I'm talking about being vulnerable and I'm showing them me being vulnerable. And then, hey, that's why, you should check out the podcast. That's why you should join the collective, because we're supporting one another and we all have our different things and we work together to get through them.
Yes, absolutely. I 1000% agree. Yeah.
All right.
And I, yeah, and I talk a lot about those things too. I have a Substack, my newsletter, Social Capital Chronicles on Substack that you can follow me. I talk about how you should be showing up on social media, why you're not showing up on social media, but those are my thoughts there. But that's one of the things that I'm basically very passionate about, and is putting out something weekly, and that's on Substack. So yeah.
Okay. I love that. And so, of course, your contact information will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
And I've loved this conversation because this podcast is about empowering women of color. It's about giving us something that we can do. And you've given us a lot of things that we can do. So now, what permission does a woman of color need to give herself today to finally show up and show out?
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's ever going to just be one thing to show up and show out. I do think that the biggest thing is to prioritize yourself, put yourself first. And that looks different, I know, for everybody, especially if you are a parent or you're a caregiver and you're doing a lot of things. But you do need to prioritize yourself, which means taking care of yourself, getting your amount of rest, exercising, taking those moments for yourself to center yourself. Too many of us don't prioritize ourselves and our health. And we end up burning out because we're trying to be too many things to other people and we're not taking care of ourselves. So the number one way you can show up and show out is to show up for yourself and really, really make that a priority. It's a non-negotiable. Stop saying yes to things that don't fill your cup up. You are not a punching bag, and you are not someone's servant. So don't say yes to everything. Say no. I love saying no. It's great, So practice saying no and don't feel bad about it because you're showing up for yourself. You say no to somebody else, you're saying yes to yourself. So that would be my number one thing that I would say.
I love that. I love that. So you don't wait for permission, you become it. And when you become it, everything rises to meet you. That's the Dream Lifestyle Standard. And if you're ready to live it, join us inside the Dream Lifestyle Collective. We provide the strategy, sisterhood, and structure for Black women 50 plus ready for their next chapter. So Trish, final thoughts. What would you like to leave our audience with as we close out this series on building legacy?
Yeah, first of all, thanks again for having me on your show. And yes, it's been a long time coming. You and I have known each other for some time. I think the number one thing for women out there who are looking to show up and show out, again, is to prioritize yourself and to be fearless, is to take the leap. It's never too late to take the leap to do something that lights you up. If you are not doing something that excites you right now, find that thing, whatever that thing is, get excited about it, and it looks different for everybody. But if you're not excited about something right now at this phase in your life, find it, research it, go to different events, talk to people, watch podcasts like this, join communities to find out what that thing is. Get curious about life and what's going on around you so that you can find the thing that lights you up. Because life is so much sweeter when we're doing things that we're actually excited about, because we're already doing 50 million things that we don't want to do anyway. So let's prioritize finding the thing that really makes us happy and that we're excited about. That's the thing that I would say that women need to be doing right now. And also too, you can follow me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Trish Lindo. I have my website, trishlindo.com. And like I said, you can also find me on Substack under Social Capital Chronicles, where I talk to founders and executives like yourself. So we can continue these conversations. But I'm always on social media. And I know, but that's because I love social media. I love it. It's a crazy, crazy world on social media, but I consume it because that way, the more I consume, the more I can tell you about it. I approach it from like a very scientific way of looking at social media. So I have an understanding of how it moves and how it shapes. So, but you can find me, you can Google me and you can find me easily. But the number one place you'll find me to respond is on LinkedIn. DM me.
Love it, love it, love it. Find that thing that lights you up. So for those who are watching or listening, share this with a woman who needs to be reminded that legacy is what you're building right now. Trish Lindo, thank you again for saying yes, for sharing this space with me. Thank you to the Leon Thomas group for producing. And we'll be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern with Linnell Baker Hall. She is a senior government advisor, entrepreneur, and author. And I'll be in Charlotte because I'll be there at Career Mastered to get an award. So thank you all and see you next time.